Allamanda Blanchetii, also known as purple Alamanda. I start to propagate my Alamanda plant by identify a healthy stem before making any cut. Then I divide it into small cutting, about 20 centimeters in length. For this video, I try to propagate Alamanda using water. Another method to rooting Alamanda cuttings are by using soil. For using water to propagate Alamanda, I change their water every day. I change the water daily because to minimize the risk for potential fungal infections. At day 20, I decide to transfer my Alamanda cutting to the soil. I choose 2 most healthy stem cutting to transfer to the soil. Then I plant my Alamanda cutting about 8 to 10 centimeters deep in the soil. Also, before planting my Alamanda cutting, I make sure that my soil I'm using is in moist condition. This is because moist soil is much easier to work with than dry soil. On average, Alamanda cuttings propagate using water take between 3 to 4 weeks to produce root. Finally, at day 28, we can see a new leaf emerging. Believe it or not, the roots that a plant produces in water propagation are different from the roots it produces in the soil. Roots that produce by soil propagation are thicker and sturdier. These roots are better for finding and taking in water from the environment. So, if you want to use water as your propagate method, take this into account since water-propagated plant root are a bit thinner and fragile. You can choose whatever method to suit your needs when trying to propagate Alamanda cuttings. For me, my preference to propagate Alamanda cuttings are by using water. Soil I use when transferring my Alamanda cutting contain cocoa peat, red burn soil, micro, fine sand, old humus, and charcoal. Alamanda thrive in almost any type of soil. You can use whatever growing media available to your convenience for propagate Alamanda cutting. Also, if you can, please make sure that your growing media are sterilized and clean. By choosing sterilized and clean growing media will prevent new cutting from becoming infected from disease-causing pathogens. As long as you use well-drained soil to propagate Alamanda cutting, you will be fine. Soil temperature in the morning 27.2 degrees Celsius. When established, Alamanda tolerate from loamy, clay, sandy, or chalk soil textures. For me, soil pH for growing Alamanda are between 6 to 7.5 pH. My soil pH, when I try to grow Alamanda, are about 7 pH. For Alamanda once established, the root ball and root system does not like to be disturbed. Before I make a cutting for propagation, I sanitized my scissor. I sterilized my scissor using rubbing alcohol swab. My rubbing alcohol swab contains 70% isopropyl alcohol. According to the Center for Disease Control, isopropyl alcohol in concentrations of 70% or more will disinfect surfaces for bacteria, fungi, and viruses. I also repeat this process before I make a new cutting from new plant. When using rubbing alcohol, please do not dilute it with water. Because dilute isopropyl alcohol will make the concentrations go down. This will resulting low at effectiveness against bacteria, fungi, and viruses. Alcohol is highly flammable, so take precautions. Please safely dispose of alcohol swab after using it. You also can use chlorine, bleach to disinfect your tools. For using bleach, we can make 10% solution. Which means 1 part bleach and 9 part water. I don't recommend using bleach for pruning and cutting tools that require a sharp edge, since bleach is known to be corrosive to metals. Please safely dispose of bleach after using it. Please don't pour it in your garden as it can harm plants and beneficial soil organisms. When you try to propagate Alamanda using soil, you can use rooting hormones for the Alamanda cutting. The main reason to use rooting hormones is to aid in rooting process. Other benefit to use rooting hormones are reduce shrink and rooting time, increase the number of roots produced, accelerate root initiation, and improve rooting uniformity. But using rooting hormones' effectiveness depend on the plant. For example, you gain high benefit when using rooting hormones for bougainvillea cutting compared to coleus cutting. Usually rooting hormones come with liquid or powder form. Rooting hormones also come in various formulations and contain different ingredients. So choose carefully what kind of rooting hormones you want to use. Please read and follow the instructions carefully before start using any rooting hormones. I didn't use any rooting hormones in this video. When propagate Alamanda using cutting, it is also common to have some cuttings fail to produce root. As you can see, I planted 2 cutting in this video, but only 1 successfully produced root. For me, Alamanda cutting rate to produce root are about 60%. For successful Alamanda cutting propagation, it is important early on to check that the growing medium is still moist condition daily. During unrooted cutting stage, Alamanda cutting require water to prevent desiccation. Water is important since it needed for process such as photosynthesis. Photosynthesis influence root development and plant growth. As we are all know, plants cannot grow or survive without photosynthesis. We need to keep Alamanda well watered until they are well established. Once mature, Alamanda is drought tolerant. In first 60 days, I place my Alamanda at bright indirect light condition. Day 61 to 100 day, I relocate my Allamanda plant at partial shade location. At day 101 and beyond, I place my Alamanda at full sun. Alamanda prefer to grow in full sun condition. Alamanda need at least 6 to 8 hours of full sun to thrive. At day 20 through day 60, my water usage are about 100 milliliters every time I water my plant. I only water Alamanda cutting if the topsoil become a little bit dry. When established, day 100, I allow the soil to dry out before begin waterings. At this stage, I water my Alamanda, about 400 milliliters average, every time I water my plant. Water usage depend on container size, container type, weather, and climate you live in. On day 152, I decided to repot my plant to bigger container. Your water usage may be different than me. Container size I use for growing Alamanda from day 20 to 154, height 12 centimeters, width 25 centimeters. Container size I use for growing Alamanda from day 154, height 20 centimeters, width 31 centimeters. You also can grow Alamanda in bigger container than mine. The bigger the container, the bigger root system will develop and will resulting bigger plant. Please make sure your container have good drainage. Waterlogged container will promote root rot. For me, the advantage for growing in container is gives me more control over sunlight, moisture, and temperature. I start to use fertilizer when my plant at day 60. After that, I fertilize my Alamanda every 4 weeks. I use all-purpose liquid fertilizer for growing my Alamanda. You can use whatever fertilizer available to your convenience. Please read and follow the instructions carefully before starting using any fertilizers. My minimum temperature when growing Alamanda is 23 degrees Celsius. My maximum temperature when growing Alamanda is 33 degrees Celsius. My average humidity level when growing Alamanda is 86%. Flower bud start to form. I grow my Alamanda in tropical climate. Alamanda prefer to grow in tropical, subtropical, monsoonal climate. Alamanda are evergreen climbing shrub that can grow from 1.5 meter to 3 meter in height. Alamanda stems are covered with bristle-like hairs. Alamanda leaves are about 10 centimeters to 20 centimeters wide and arranged in whorls of 4. Their leaves are hairy, with a cuminate apex for entire leaf margin. The leaves and stems contain a sticky, milky sap that can cause a wide range of toxic effects. If you come in contact with this sap, you may experience skin irritation, dermatitis. My Alamanda flowers colors are purplish pink to violet, They are about 5 centimeters to 6.5 centimeters wide with a yellowish tube. Flower damage are from monkey nail. The genus Allamanda is named in honors to 18th-century botanist Dr. Frederick Lewis Allamand, who first introduced this plant by sending seeds to a fellow botanist. In my opinion, Alamanda is easy to propagate and easy plant to grow, and everyone who loves flowers should try to grow them. Thank you for watching.